Hello everyone, I'm your hostess with the mostest 8-second gaming, and in today's video we are going to be talking about the best settings for Season 18. If you want to play at the top of your game, you gotta have the best settings to do so let's break it down. But just quickly, if you guys are here, it's clear you're looking to take your Apex skill to the next level. And if that's the case, then you need to check out the GameLeap website right now. Over there, we have top-level coaches creating the best, most highly informative guides to make you the best player you could possibly be. We have highly in-depth gun guides, legend guides, VOD reviews covering pretty much every situation you can think of, so click the link in the description, pick yourself up a membership, and start to improve today. But okay, with that out of the way, let's hop into things. And I do want to make one thing very clear. This is not going to be a keybinds video because keybinds are a whole different box of frogs. This is just going to be some settings to make your game run smoother and at peak performance. So starting off first, let's go over the gameplay tab, and the first one is the interact prompt style. This is just the thing that pops up next to a weapon or item on the ground, telling you a little bit more about it. Now this is very rare, but if you're fighting somebody next to an item on the ground, it can pop up and get in your way. So if you're having issues with that, turn that to compact. Me personally, I don't have an issue with it, and I do like seeing a little bit more information. It helps me loot faster, so I leave it on default. Next up though, we have button hints, and this just shows on your HUD what buttons are set to what. Typically, you should know what your stuff is bound to already, but because it doesn't have any unnecessary screen clutter, you can leave it on, but if you like a cleaner look, turn it off. Next up, we have crosshair damage feedback. These are hit markers, and you should always have them off. You will know that you are damaging somebody because the damage numbers are going to be popping up. The hit markers popping up can cause unnecessary screen clutter and cause you to miss shots because you actually can't see what you're shooting at. So turn these off. But speaking of the damage numbers, that is the next thing, and of course we have to put that onto stacking. You do not want floating because you are not going to be able to add up those numbers in your head on the fly, and you need to be giving clear, precise callouts. With stacking, it adds it up for you so you can give a very accurate callout about how much you hit somebody for right away. And you don't want both because, again, that is just too much stuff on your screen. You do not want that unnecessary screen clutter. And also, this should never be turned off because, like I said, you want to be able to give clear callouts, so stacking is the best option. Next up, we have the ping opacity, and you can turn this to faded if you are having issues seeing through pings. I turn this on to faded because a lot of the times I am solo queuing, and sometimes my teammates ping stuff and I can't see through it when I'm fighting somebody, so it is nice to have it on faded. Next up, we have obituaries, and that is the kill feed, and you should always have this on. The kill feed is very important, especially if you are going to third party someone. As you're walking up to a fight, you can hear the guns that are being shot and look in the kill feed. If the guns match the ones that you're hearing, then you know that people are getting down and people are trading, making it easier to third party. Information is very key in Apex, so always have this on. Next up though, we have minimap rotation, and this one is 100% personal choice. All this means is that the minimap is going to rotate with you, so it's always facing the way that you are facing. Me personally, I have this off because it just helps me tell which way's north, which way's south, all that kind of stuff when I'm just running around the map. It's a personal preference, have it what you want. Next up, we have weapon auto cycle on empty. This should be off. You want to be in control of your guns at all times. You do not want to put any control in the game. And you should know when you are running low on ammo because you will have the little pop-up on your HUD saying low ammo and then no ammo. So you should know when to swap. If you have this on auto cycle, when you run out of ammo, you might cause yourself to double swap because it's muscle memory to try to swap to another gun. If you're already swapping, the game will think you want to swap back to the one that's empty, and that can cause you to lose a fight, so always have this off. Next up, we have auto sprint, and me personally, I do recommend you have this off, but I know that a lot of people like to have it on. Auto sprint can lead you to be in less control of your character because you're relying on the game to automatically sprint for you. It can cause some issues here and there, but again, this one is all personal preference, and some people just like to have that auto sprint on. Double tap sprint is the exact same thing, it's just personal preference. I personally play with this one off. Jetpack control only applies to Valkyrie, so if you don't play Valkyrie, you don't really need to worry about this. But if you are playing Valkyrie, hold is the way to go. It gives you more control. Though if you are a controller player, I hear that toggle makes it easier to aim certain things while you are flying through the air, so maybe try that out and give it a shot and see what you like. Next up, we have incoming damage feedback. These are little arrows that show you which direction you're being shot from when you do take damage. These should be on 2D. 3D is just a little bit of unnecessary screen clutter. 2D is all you really need. You just need a tiny little arrow showing you the direction. And you don't want both because, again, you don't want any screen clutter. 3D is just a little bit too much. 2D is kind of a nice happy medium, so take that. Next up, we have taking damage closes death box or crafting menu. This should be off. This helps you in so many different situations having it off. Main one being when you're crafting in Storm, because the Storm damage will kick you out of the crafter, so if you're not super fast, you will have a lot of issues with it. Also, if you're trying to get a really clutch armor swap in the middle of a fight, it will kick you out as soon as you start to take damage. It's going to be a little bit tough to get used to if you don't have this already off, but trust me, it is worth taking the few deaths that it's going to take to really get the hang of it. Next up, we have Hop Up Pop Up, and this just determines if the UI will show when a hop up is attached to a weapon. I like seeing if a hop up is attached. I like to have this on. You definitely should have it on as well. And next up, we have the streamer and anonymous mode. I'm going to talk about these both at the same time because they kind of go hand in hand. Streamer mode can come in handy in a lot of different situations, especially if you play in really high tier lobbies. A lot of people get really nervous when they see a name that they recognize. If that happens to you, turn this off because then you will never recognize a name because you'll just see Horizon 2345. And anonymous mode is just basically the same thing. It hides people's names, but it doesn't hide your name. So if you get nervous when you see people, throw on anonymous mode. Next up, there's usage sharing, and this is just EA grabbing all of the information from the game to make it a little bit better. This is essentially the same thing as a website using cookies. I have it enabled because it doesn't really change anything, it doesn't really affect anything, and if I can do something small to make Apex a lot better, then I'm going to do my part, but you can disable it if you don't want EA tracking anything of yours. And the next thing we gotta talk about is performance display, and this should always be on. You need to know if anything in the game is going haywire, if it's lagging, if there's any input delay, if your FPS is dropping, you need to know. Because that will affect your fights, and if you're having performance issues, then you might want to avoid some certain things and play your game differently. This gives you a ton of very crucial information, so definitely keep this on. Next up though, we have the reticle, and this is 100% personal choice if you want to keep it default or if you want to customize it. I highly recommend customizing it and using the code 02550. That is a really solid green color, and green is the best color for a reticle because the human eye has the easiest time differentiating greens. So if it blends in with the background, your eye is going to be able to naturally pick it out a lot easier. But everybody has their own personal preference on what kind of reticle they run, so play around with yours and figure yours out for yourself. Now moving into the accessibility tab, I'm not going to talk about any of the colorblind modes because that only affects people that are colorblind. If you're colorblind, use what mode you need to use. But the one thing that I do want to talk about is subtitles. If you are not hearing impaired, you should never have subtitles on. They cause unnecessary screen clutter and they also cause movement. The human eye is naturally drawn towards movement, so if you're seeing these subtitles in a fight, your eye is going to dart to them and it could cause you to miss very key details. If somebody's moving, peeking, swinging, anything like that, the first shots are very crucial, but if your eye darts towards the subtitles, you might miss those. So always have subtitles off unless you absolutely need them. Now, like I said, next we're not going to be covering any keybinds, so let's move into the video settings. And the video settings are going to be very short, sweet, and to the point because it does rely very heavily on your build. Your PC needs to be able to run certain settings in order to have them on, but there are some things that I will talk about. First up, your FoV. This just basically determines how much of the game you can see. It is your field of view. And there are different opinions on what you should run and what you shouldn't run. A lot of people say you should run 110 and some people say you shouldn't go below 100. But in my opinion, 110 gets kind of a weird fisheye effect. So there's one FoV that I highly recommend, and that is 104. This gives you a great field of view, but it doesn't start to distort it and give it a weird fisheye effect. Though 110 is also very acceptable, so play around and see what you enjoy. Next up is FoV ability scaling. This increases and decreases based off your character's movement speed, so if you use something like an Octane Stim or a Bloodhound Ultimate, your screen will get wider. Your FoV directly affects your sensitivity. And if your FoV changes mid-fight, that is going to affect your sensitivity and throw off your aim. So you should set this to disabled. Keep your FoV the same throughout your entire fight. And next up we have sprint view shake. This should be at minimal. If I could, I would disable it fully. It is useless and should not even be in the game, but it is there, so just turn it to minimal. Now when it comes to the actual settings, anti-aliasing, texture streaming budget, everything like that, that is going to depend on your build. If you want the most FPS you can possibly get, everything should be turned down to minimal or low or off or whatever you can. This will make your game look like it's made out of Play-Doh, but you will be getting some sweet FPSs, and I played on everything with low for quite a long time on my old PC. It's gonna look bad at the start, but trust me, you get used to it. One thing that I do recommend you do turn off no matter what your build is impact marks. This is just stuff like bullet holes that are being left in walls, stuff like that. It's kind of useless, it doesn't really matter. So even if you have a high-end PC, I do recommend turning this off. It's just an easier load. But let me know what topic we should cover next in the comments down below. And if you guys want to stay up to date with the latest and greatest Apex Legends tips, tricks, and news, don't forget to smash the like and subscribe button. Thanks so for watching. Once again, I've been saying game, and I'll see you guys in the next one.